Hi everyone, my name is Cassidy Cunningham and this is our second video for Summer Reach training. This video is really targeted for interventionists as we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what it's going to look like for you whenever you're leading those Sunday groups. So just to kind of review what we talked about in that first video, we have this instructional guidance document, and I encourage you to pause this video and go ahead and read that before we jump in. If you haven't already, this is a document that you're going to want to refer back to often. I would go ahead and bookmark it somewhere in your Chrome, so that way you can come back to it throughout the Summer Reach, because there's a lot of resources and information here. We have a checklist that will be linked here with any additional resources or training about Sunday systems, and it'll be linked in this document. On page 2, we also have those office hours and training and our emails for you to contact for support. So all students are going to be receiving intervention, and it'll be each day for 1 hour. We want to make sure that all students have the opportunity to receive a Sunday lesson. So in order to accomplish this, we're asking that the ELA and math teachers come help and support RTI during that time to make sure we have small enough groups where we can have no more than 6 students at a time at a table with each teacher. So as the interventionist, you're going to be focusing on the Sunday instruction. Elementary will be focusing on Sunday System 1. Middle school will be focusing on Sunday System 2. So when students are not at your table doing Sunday, they're going to be doing math RTI. So here we have the elementary. They're going to be using Zern printed lessons, no more than 6 at a time. We're recommending that you are working with a group and that you're switching with the other content teacher. So for example, we have down here, if you have one interventionist, there can be 2 groups. So you would be switching with the ELA teacher, for example. So while you're seeing group A, they would be seeing group B, and then at the halfway point you would switch and you would see group B and the ELA teacher would then see group A. But if you have a second interventionist, they could be seeing another set of groups. So we would then have groups C and D. So while they did Sunday with group C, the math teacher would be working with group D, and then at the halfway point they would also switch, just like the first interventionist. Some people like to push into the classroom. So if interventionist 1 is working with the ELA teacher, they may just push into the classroom, and some people like to pull their students out. We're leaving that up to you all at the sites, you and your team, to decide what best works for you all. So now we're going to go ahead and dive into Sunday. So this is a picture of our Sunday kits. You'll fill out the inventory checklist that is linked in our instructional guidance document at the beginning and the end of Summer Reach to make sure you have all the materials at the start of Summer Reach, and then that you're returning all of the materials at the very end. The only thing we're asking you not to use out of the kits are the student notebooks. You'll need to make copies of these so that you can save the notebooks for our instruction in August. This means each student will need a copy of a student notebook page each day. So we recommend you making packets for the students, but whatever really works best for you and your site. Your site will be sent paper for you to make these copies of those student pages. To get started for Summer Reach, you're going to need 3 things. The learning plan book, which we can see here. This is the learning plan book. Yours may look a little bit different on the front covers. It may be a solid cover just because of the versions you may have at your school. You're also going to need the sound cards, so we can see those sound cards right here. And lastly, you're going to need your word books, so you can see that one right here. All the extra materials are great and you can definitely incorporate them, but these are the basics of what you're going to need to be successful. So if you are new to Sunday or just need a refresher, we have an in-person training opportunity for you. And we also have those asynchronous videos, but here's just a brief overview of what Sunday is. So in your learning plan book, you're going to see templates like this. It's going to tell you exactly what you need to do. At the top right, it's going to tell you what level it is. So this is level 5. They call these levels because it's not necessarily a lesson where you're only going to be spending a certain amount of time on it. We want to make sure students are mastering the content in the level before we move on to the next. So it could take 1 day or it could could take several. At the top, you're also going to see what materials that you're going to need for that level. So each level has 6 steps. You see the numbers over here on the side. We've got the 1, 2, and 3 on this particular page. So you're going to be doing all 6 steps each day. We're not skipping, we're not moving around. Go through all 6 steps in order. So steps 1 through 4 are always going to be content that students have already seen. So the page we're looking at is level 5. So steps 1 through 4 here are a review of levels 1 through 4 that they've already done. So step number 5 is where you're going to be introducing new material. And then step number 6 is where students are reading aloud. I know that's a misconception because typically for read aloud, it'll be the teacher reading, but this is not what is happening. The students are going to be doing all of the reading. So this is where they're going to be putting all of their knowledge together, and they're reading either sentences, words, or a decodable text. So for step 5, we want to make sure that we are not moving on to the next teaching point until that one teaching point has been mastered. So we're not just going based on one teaching point a day. So if students have not mastered it, we're going to be staying on that teaching point until they do. So that is very important to remember. Another important piece of teaching Sunday is sticking to the timer. In your learning plan book and next to the title of each step, you're going to be seeing the times. It's important that we're sticking to those times and making sure that we are using the program with fidelity and keeping that pace. So for this, we have 2 recommendations for you. One is to download the multi-timer app. This app is great. It allows you to go ahead and pre-program how long each step is to keep the pace of the lessons. If you don't want to download an app, I did find a website that you can use. It's an interval timer. So once again, you can pre-program each amount of time for each step to kind of keep you up with that pacing. And that link is right here on the slide. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the timing. The traditional Sunday lesson is 31 minutes. Sometimes we say 35 just to give you a little bit of wiggle room. But if you calculate each step, it's 31 minutes. So how are we going to fit 2 groups during that 1 hour time? So for our purpose in Summer Reach, I'm recommending that you shave some time off in step 3 and in step 6. So if you're new to Sunday, for step 3, you'll see that it says you should take 5 minutes. So we're going to take 2 minutes off that time to make it 3 minutes. And in step 6, it's usually 10 minutes, but we're going to take 2 minutes off there as well and make it 8 minutes. So once you feel comfortable with the pacing of doing 2 groups within an hour, I really think you could add in a minute or 2 back on steps 3 or step 6. But the main thing is that we're not taking any steps away and we're still doing all 6 steps. So with these adjustments, each lesson will be about 27 minutes instead of 31, which means you'll be teaching for 54 minutes for both groups, and that should leave you some time for transitions. So what are you going to need to get started? Like we mentioned previously, you're going to need to locate your kit and make sure that everything is accounted for by completing that inventory checklist. For each lesson, we're going to focus on using your learning plan book, your sound cards, and your word books. These are really the key pieces to get you started. Again, once you feel more comfortable, you can add in any additional pieces within the kit, like the board game, the additional cards, or the decodables. But to get you started, those are the 3 key pieces that you'll need. The next piece is the student notebook pages, which we've mentioned in the previous slide, but you're going to need to make copies of those. It is linked on here, but you also have it linked below the video. You're responsible for putting these packets together for the students. There's 19 days of instruction in Summer Reach, so each student will need 19 pages because we complete 1 student notebook page per day per lesson. Students will also need pens for their student notebooks, no pencils. You as a teacher will also need a whiteboard and a dry erase marker. We recommend that you have an implementation guide with you as you're teaching so you can follow the script. So what I mean by script is that it tells you exactly what to say for each step, and then if there's an error, once again, it gives you a script on what to say. So over here on the left, we have that implementation guide, and then over on the right, it's zoomed in for that step 1. So here in the directions, it says, read the sounds of each letter. and you're going to take 2 minutes for this. But if there's an error, it's going to tell you to say, let's trace, and then it'll give you guidance on how to complete that error correction. And we also have the asynchronous training that you can complete for a stipend and additional sessions in our RTI Canvas page that you can dive a little bit deeper into for error correction and other important topics. We recommend also reading and practicing a lesson using the implementation guide before you start teaching in the classroom. You as a teacher will feel more confident if you read through the lesson plan or the learning plan book. Just go through what level you're going to be teaching and practice the steps. You'll feel more confident as you go through each step in the classroom and putting them all together. So over here at the bottom, we also mentioned we have videos for steps 1 through 6. So we're going to look at the instructional guide and see where we can find that. So here is the instructional guidance document. So on this first page, you're going to see a link to our Canvas page with additional training in our framework that we have. You'll also see the checklist for the Sunday system materials. And then down below that, we have the list of starting points for elementary school students. And then below that, we have our middle school guidance. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And down below that, we have our RTI structure if you want to share that with anyone in your building. On page 2, we have our Sunday resources all linked here. So if you click each of these links, you're going to be seeing each step modeled for you in a video from Sunday. So you can have all 6 steps here for that additional support. That 1-hour training and our introduction to Sunday systems can be linked here. And then any resources we talked about today. The section down here is to support our other teachers, our ELA and math teachers who are going to be supporting the RTI. If the ELA teachers want to focus on fluency and comprehension, they can click this link and it's going to provide them with resources and strategies. This middle one here is for the Zern. There's information about the Zern platform, links to the calendars that have pacing, and the lesson resources are linked directly onto the calendar. And then, of course, at the bottom, we have our list of support. We're also going to have additional virtual office hours, so you can hop on during those times and we can talk through any questions that you might have. And then, of course, the RTI team emails are also linked here for your convenience if you have specific questions. So let's talk a little bit more in depth on what the elementary interventionists are going to be doing and what it's going to look like. Since we're not going to be doing placement tests for Sunday, if you have screen data from our Tier 3 instruction for your students, you can use this. If not, we have created starting levels for each grade level. So it's going to address those skills that must be mastered for their upcoming grade. These are linked here on the slides, and they're also linked in the instructional guidance document, and I'll show you where that is in just a few minutes. You can personalize the support that you're giving students and move students up and down according to those needs and how they're performing. Instruction for Summer Reach is going to start on day 1. We're going to start that first lesson that very first day. So middle school is going to start everyone on level 5. They're not going to be completing the reading and spelling and placement tests either. So this level is very difficult, and I think that all the students can use this as a great review. You're going to be providing personalized support for them based on the activities within the lesson and then for the pacing. So if students are mastering it quickly, we may be moving through the content a lot faster. Rather, if the students are struggling, they may need additional days on that specific skill before moving on. And again, instruction is going to start on day 1 of Summer Reach. So we want to start our instruction on level 5. You can decide student placement on who is in each group, but the instructional piece will be level 5 for all students. So we're going to hop back into our instructional guidance document because on this page you're going to see the link for elementary starting points here that we just talked about. And then for middle school, we have the district provided materials. This link is where you're going to find the lesson plans that are created for you. So you have the written lesson plans for each day. There's a total of 15. So you'll have about 4 days to provide that personalized support based on how quickly your students are progressing.